Welcome. Thank you so much for joining me for today's webinar, Fun in the Sun, 4 tips to an unforgettable summer. I'm excited to share today's webinar with you for several reasons, but one of the most significant reasons is that the tips I'm going to share with you really can be applied to lots of different areas of our life, not just in the summer. And I have found them to be really useful and practical and positive in my own life in a lot of different situations. So I'm excited to share with you. Summer, however, can be a really wonderful time of year. Oftentimes the schedule changes a little bit. If you have kids, then they're out of school and just a little bit more of a laid back time in the year. But summer can also be really challenging. The time goes by very quickly and you have all sorts of plans. And this summer you say, I have this stack of books. I'm definitely going to read 2 or 3 of these books this summer. You have great plans for a vacation. You have quality family time planned. And somehow at the end of the summer, you're left with exhaustion, the pile of books, they're still sitting there, they're unread. That quality family time has turned into family argument time. The vacation, it just didn't turn out exactly how you hoped. And by the end of the summer, you're thinking like, just let's get back to normal, schedule and nice boring routine. I really believe it can be different though. There's gotta be a way to make it happen where it's not just an endless cycle of good intentions and then disappointment, because it sounds a little bit to me like New Year's resolutions. At the start of the year, we have all these great ideas, we set these goals for ourselves, and by the middle of February, we've forgotten them already, right? So it doesn't have to be this way. And summer, here we are halfway through the year of 2017, and it's a nice time to just pause and reflect and say, hey, how's the year going? Am I doing the things that I want to do? Am I accomplishing some of the goals that I set for myself? And it's a nice time to check in. So like I said, these tips that I'm going to share with you today can be great going into the summer, but they can also be great for other parts of our lives as well. So here they are. Let me share with you the overview, and then we'll go into detail. 4 tips for an unforgettable summer. Start with the end. Get on the no train. Open hands. And inchworm wisdom. Now let's jump in and say a little bit more about each of these. Number 1 is to start with the end in mind. Now, this comes from Stephen Covey, who is the author of The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And this idea of starting with the end in mind is one of the habits, he says, of highly effective people. So what difference does it make? What difference does it make if we start with the end in mind? I see that it's related to something that author and speaker Nancy Duarte says. And she says this: the future isn't a place we're going to go. It's a place that you get to create. The future isn't a place we're going to go. It's a place that you get to create. Now, when you first hear that, you might say, okay, yeah, that sounds nice. It's sort of like a lofty idea. And it is sort of, and sort of not. Now, there's obviously unknowns in our future that we have no control over. And yet there's many things that we do have control, or at least some control over, or influence over. So this idea that the future isn't a place that we're going to, it's a place that we get to create. Now, we use language every day. We talk, we write, we listen, we read. We use words to describe things. We describe our thoughts, we describe our feelings, we describe ideas. Language is very descriptive. We use it all the time to describe. Another thing that language is used for, though, is to create. So we create things with our words. We truly speak things into existence, ideas, events, thoughts, feelings. If I meet you at a friend's house and I think you're really a nice person, I'd like to get to know you better, I might say, hey, do you have time to meet up for coffee sometime in the next couple of weeks? Now, we've now put an event on the calendar to meet for coffee. We just created this within the last 30 seconds. Just with our words, we've created a new event. The future isn't a place that we're going to go. It's something we get to create. Begin with the end in mind. Here's another example that's really powerful to me about this idea. Last year, I turned 40. And the year before that, I was starting to think ahead, and I wanted to plan something significant. Starting this new decade, I really felt like it was a big milestone, and I wanted to plan accordingly. So I told my husband, John, one day, rather casually, I just said, I think for my 40th birthday, I want to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. And I kind of made it up as I was talking. I was like, I really like when we do things like this with friends. So let's see if we can get some friends to come along and join us. So fast forward, in February of 2016, a group of 12 of us made it to the highest peak in Africa, the top of Mount Kilimanjaro. We had friends from the US, from Saudi Arabia, from Canada, and South Africa. And I have to tell you, as we rode the bus to the start of the hike, I had this thought of, wow, who would have ever thought? Last year, I kind of casually said to John, I think I want to climb Mount Kilimanjaro for my 40th birthday. Honestly, at the time that I said that, I wasn't even 100% sure what country Mount Kilimanjaro was in. I knew it was on the continent of Africa, but which exact country, I wasn't even sure. I was just making this up as I went. And it was with these words that we created this epic adventure. So, starting with the end in mind, when you think about this summer, at the end of it, what do you want to look back on? How do you want to have spent your time? And how do you want to feel at the end of the summer? So I want to encourage you to take some time to think about these questions. I want to encourage you and invite you to ask the people who are important in your life, your family, your spouse, friends that you want to spend time with. Ask them to talk about these questions with you. Decide as a family even, what do you want to look back on at the end of summer 2017? What do you want to do with your time? How do you want to feel at the end of the summer? Start with the end in mind. All right, now looking at tip number 2 to an unforgettable summer. Get a first-class ticket on the no train. Now, when I first say this, everybody's ears perk up. A ticket, where are we going? First class? Absolutely, I'm there. And then, on the no train? That doesn't sound very fun. Yeah. So saying no can be a little bit difficult for us. And I want to ask you a question today. How do you feel about saying no? So I'm going to put up a polling question. And I'd like to know from you, how do you feel about saying no? So share with me what you think. Saying no is stressful to me. I worry about disappointing people. Maybe I have no problem saying no. Maybe you're someone who has no problem with it. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's really hard. And you can actually answer more than one question, because I know sometimes it's a little bit difficult to decide and you can feel different ways. So I will give you the option of answering multiple answers in this one. How do you feel about saying no? All right, take another couple of seconds and register your responses, and then we'll see what the audience says today about saying no. Okay, so 75% of us say, I worry about disappointing people. This is a real concern with saying no, right? 25% say you have no problem. So I have such admiration for those of you who have no problem saying no. And then 50% say, yeah, sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's hard. So this is a real challenge for lots of us with saying no. I worry about disappointing people. I worry about disappointing my spouse, my friends, my family. It can be hard to say no for me because I'm a people pleaser. I like to keep people happy. And so there's a part of me that just doesn't like saying no. Now, if you can relate to this, there are, what I like to say, there's two cars on the no train. The first one is that no is a complete sentence, and the second one is to find something that you love saying no to. So let's take a look at this just a little bit closer. No is a complete sentence. Now, I first heard about this years ago, and I don't have any memory of who said it to me or where it was. I think I was maybe in high school when I first heard this, and it has stayed with me for a long time. No is a complete sentence. Now, we can be polite. We can say no, thank you. But we don't always have to give an explanation. And this is something I struggle with. If I have to say no to someone, I want to explain why. I want them, like, well, this, and I wish I could, but this is going on. So this concept that no is a complete sentence, that I can say, no, thank you, no explanation, this really changes things for me. And I've done this a few times. And I remember specifically one time I was on like a board, like committee meeting, and someone asked me, oh, Lisa, would you be interested in taking, a position, secretary or something like that? And I just said, no, thank you. And I didn't think anything about it. It was one of those times where it just went easily to say no. And one of the women came up to me afterwards. She's like, that was amazing how you just said no, thank you. Like, I want to learn how to do that. I'm always saying yes to things and getting myself into more things that I want. And I didn't even realize it at the time, but it's really freeing to just be able to say, no, thank you. And sometimes I cushion it and say, I wish I could, but no, thank you. So remember that no is a complete sentence. The second piece of this that could be helpful in saying no is learning to actually love to say no. Now, I am going to suggest that you already have some things in your life that you enjoy saying no to. And I'm going to take it a little step further than just it's okay to say no. And we're going to say, I love to say no. Now, you may not agree with this right away, so hang in there with me. A couple of years ago, I was working with a coaching client, and she wanted to become more comfortable with saying no. So we were talking about this, and I ended up asking her, I said, what do you enjoy saying no to? And she thought for a moment, and then she was like, I really feel good when I say no to dessert, or I say no to the potato chips, or no to a second helping. I know I'm not going to feel good after I eat it. She's like, I really feel good about saying no to these things. So I would ask you, what do you love to say no to? Think about it. What is it that you love to? Do you love to say no to cleaning? Do you love to say no to, maybe it's desserts? Do you love to say no to roller coasters? There's something in your life that's easy to say no to. What is it? And now that you've identified that, I want to encourage you to use it as practice. Practice in saying no. Because if you're like me and you have a difficult time saying no, then this is a way to say, hey, you know what? I do like to say no sometimes. I say no, and it's not so hard sometimes. Now, one thing I want to be really clear about is that having a first-class ticket on the no train doesn't mean that we go around saying no to everything and everyone. Okay? There's a lot of things that you want to say yes to. There's a lot of things that you need to say yes to. Having that first-class ticket on the no train means that you can access it when you need to. You can think about things and you can say, you know what would be best for me, or what would be best for my family, what would be best for my summer is if I said no to this. So you use it when you need it. Know that it's in your pocket. You can pull it out when you need to. Say yes to the things that you want to say yes to and you need to say yes to, and say no to the things that you really need to say no to. And make a choice. Be intentional about that. Remember, the future isn't a place that we're going, it's a place that we're creating. The third tip to an unforgettable summer is to hold your summer in open hands. Now, it is our nature as humans to hold on to things. If you look at your fingers naturally curve. If you just relax your hands, what do your fingers do? They close. It takes less effort and energy to close your fingers than it does to open them. This is how we're anatomically put together. And yet, herein lies a lot of our stress when it comes to plans and planning. So we begin planning and we begin putting together plans. And you started doing this just a few minutes ago. I asked you to, even when I said, think about how you want to feel at the end of the summer. Start with the end in mind. This is not the problem. Okay, this is a good thing that we do as humans. We plan. The problem isn't in the planning. The problem often lies in getting attached to our plans. We close our fingers around those plans. And slowly, as we add more and more detail, our grip gets tighter and tighter and tighter. Winston Churchill is known to have said, plans are useless, but planning is essential. The thing is, if those plans don't come together and we've been holding on to them really tightly, we experience a lot of stress and distress and disappointment. And ironically, sometimes our tight grip on our plans could crush them even. So, the third tip to an unforgettable summer is to hold those plans, all your goals, all your dreams, your expectations, your ambitions, in open hands. Now, some of those plans are going to come together and some of them aren't. But if I hold my plans in open hands, it's a lot easier to let go of the ones that don't happen. In fact, they just kind of fall away. And it's okay if they do. I want to share with you a little experience that we had in Bali with some monkeys. These little guys are so cute. And if you ever have the chance to travel to Bali, I highly recommend that you go to the monkey forest in the town of Ubud. It's a big wooded area right in the middle of the city. And there's hundreds of monkeys that live there. They're just loose. They're not in their natural habitat. It's home for them. They run around. There's families of them. They're chasing each other. They're swimming in ponds even. It's one of the most entertaining places I've ever been. You can feed them crackers. They'll sit on your shoulder like this. They'll come. You have to watch if you have earrings in or any jewelry, they'll run away with it. And these little monkeys are some of the best entertainment ever. Now, these little guys, as cute as they also can be pests in certain parts of the world. And sometimes to the farmers in parts of the world where these monkeys are so numerous, they can cause some trouble. Now, catching these little monkeys can be challenging because they're fast and they're wiry and they're smart. But the natives in these areas have designed a pretty ingenious way of catching the monkeys. So watch what they do.
First, he laboriously drills a hole in a giant ant heap when he is sure a baboon is watching him, because he knows baboons are incurably inquisitive. Next, he puts some wild melon seeds into the hole and works them in so that they drop into a hollow. Then he saunters off, knowing the baboon is burning with curiosity. The baboon doesn't trust that human being at all, so he plays it cool. But he's dying to know what gives in that confounded hole. Finally, Mr. Inquisitive can't take it any longer. He's got to know what's in there. He reaches in, grabs a fistful, and now his hand's too big to come out.
So you and I look at this monkey and we're like, monkey, just open your hand, right? Drop the seeds. That's all it takes for you to get free, to be free, right? But he holds on. And how often are we like this, right? We have these plans, we have these ideas, we have these goals, and they're not working out, but we just hold on to them and we squeeze them tighter and tighter. Opening our hands leads to freedom. So my question to you is, what needs to be held gently in open hands this summer? And how will it bring you more freedom? Hold your summer in open hands. The fourth and final tip I want to share with you today about having an unforgettable summer is to use inchworm wisdom. In April, we were camping and it was beautiful weather, so I took a nap outside our tent one day and I woke up and I see this little guy making his way across my vest. I watched him for a few minutes and I was just about to take my finger and just flick him off when I was like, wait a minute, this guy is brilliant. Look how he's moving along. Look how he just takes one step at a time, checks it out, feels what's going on, and then he decides, do I go a different direction? This guy gave me an idea. The next day, John and I were doing some rock climbing, and John got onto a climb that was pretty hard, and he got to a point where he's like, I don't know if I can get through this. It's sort of like the toughest part of the climb. I'm at the base of the climb belaying him, and I yell up to him. I said, use your inchworm wisdom. And he's like, my what? I'm like, like an inchworm, just one step at a time. Don't worry about what's up ahead. Just look for the next handhold. So before we know it, he gets through the difficult part of the climb. He gets to the very top. He starts coming down and he says, you know what, that inchworm wisdom is pretty good stuff. And so for the rest of our trip, we started talking about this inchworm wisdom. When I got on a climb next and I was like, I don't know if I can do it. It's like, hey, just focus on the next step. Just focus on the next handhold. Don't worry about what's up ahead. And the more I've thought about it, I'm like, hey, this is really good for life, right? Oftentimes we get overwhelmed with trying to figure out all of the steps involved in something we want to do, all of the steps in a plan that we want to, work on. But here's inchworm wisdom. Decide on the next step, and then take a step, and then look around. See how it feels. What's good? What's not good? And then based on what you see around you, what you learn, what you're experiencing, then you decide on the next step. And then you take that step. And then you look around and you evaluate, you analyze, and you say, hey, what's good? What's not so good? And then you decide on the next step. And then you repeat and repeat and repeat. And this inchworm wisdom takes the pressure away of having it all figured out. Now, remember at the start of today, we said, begin with the end in mind. So have a big plan, a big picture plan, kind of know the direction that you want to go. But know that it's okay if you don't know exactly how every step along the way is going to go. Take one step in the direction that you want to go. And then see what happens. Look around. How are people responding? How are you feeling inside? Are you feeling comfortable? Are you feeling excited? Are you feeling like dread? Like, oh, that was bad? This can even eliminate regret because, we can just say, hey, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't mean it's a failure. I'm just kind of evaluating as I go. And then I make a different decision. I'm going to alter my course a little bit. Or maybe you take the step and you look around, everything seems to be giving you a green light. Keep going in the same direction. Inchworm wisdom can be an incredibly pressure relieving way to approach ideas, to approach plans, to approach our goals and our decisions in life. So this summer, start with the end in mind. Get your first class ticket on the No train. You can keep it in your pocket. You don't have to use it every day, but know it's there for when you need it, when your family needs you to use it, when your spouse needs you to, when the people around you need you to say no for a good reason. You've got it there. Hold your summer in open hands. Remember that open hands leads to freedom. We don't want to get stuck like the monkey, right? Open hands leads to freedom. And use inchworm wisdom. And at the end of summer 2017, you're going to be able to say summer 2017 was unforgettable because you're going to be able to fill in the blanks. I want to encourage you to take a few moments after this webinar to think about this statement right here. This is another way to start with the end in mind. Summer 2017 was unforgettable because put yourself ahead at the end of the summer and think back. What do you want to be looking back on and knowing this was an unforgettable time because I held the summer in open hands. I started with the end in mind. I had good plans, but I just took them one step at a time, evaluated as I went, inchworm wisdom. And I said no when I needed to say no. So I want to thank you so much for being part of the webinar today. I hope that these tips will serve you well, not just this summer, but in all kinds of other areas in your life, just like they have for me. My upcoming webinars are going to be July 19 and August 16. I'm very excited to be bringing in some guests and still working on the details and the dates and getting my guests lined up, but have some really talented colleagues who I'm working with to bring them on as guests on my webinars. So that will be something new coming up in the upcoming months. So I'm going to answer some questions. I see a question coming in. So let's take a few moments to see this. So the question, my husband and I are not good at planning, and then we find ourselves out of options, booking accommodations, flights, etc. How can we use the inchworm wisdom with authenticity and yet not missing on opportunities? This is a really great question. Thank you so much for sharing this. So those of us who are not really good at planning ahead can be left with feeling at the last minute, our options are limited. And so this is the balance, right? Because it's true, like some things that you want to do, you do have to plan ahead for. And then there's other things that can be put into place at the last minute. So I would say start with the end in mind. Okay, so when you're thinking about plans, some of those plans are going to be, you can put them together, you know, in a few minutes, but you need to know which of the plans and times it's okay to do that. And then usually it's if it's something special, something different than usual, that you're going to have to put more thought in, more time. If it involves booking airplane tickets or, you know, scheduling tours, things like that, then you do have to plan ahead, right? And here's how you can use inchworm wisdom then, especially if you don't like those times that kind of put you in, you know, to a box and kind of put pressure on you. I would say find tickets that are refundable. Find if you're looking for tours or accommodations and you're not 100% sure, but you know you need to book in advance, try to find ways to do that where it's refundable, and then you still have your options and you can continue to explore step by step. I use a lot of different websites like hotels.com and things like that. And I always make sure, is it refundable? Can I get out of this if I need to? Because sometimes I'm planning pretty far in advance and I'm not sure, well, is it really going to be able to happen or not? But I want to give myself the option. So I do that, and then I can make sure I can back out of it if I need to. So that's a great question. And then also know the times where it's okay. You can just kind of throw things together. If you're just going to be jumping in the car and going for a weekend trip like that, you can put those things together more of the last minute. So thank you so much for that question. Other questions? Anybody wants to share, or any comments? The baboon example, yeah, somebody mentioned that. That is one of my favorite examples, and it's just, I see it happening in my own life so much, right? Like those, I get holding on to something so tight, and if I just let go, and sometimes we make plans, and they're really good plans, and so it can be disappointing if they don't happen. But again, if we hold them in open hands, it decreases the stress of if they don't happen. And the other thing is, most of the time, if our first choice of plans don't come together the way we thought they would, sometimes something even better comes along, or something equally as good as the first plans that we made. So that's a really good example and visual for us to keep in mind, of open hands, holding things, holding our plans, our dreams, our goals, our aspirations in open hands. This really gives us more freedom. So thank you so much for attending today, and I look forward to seeing you at future webinars and connecting with you in between. Feel free to send me an email at any point in time. I'd love to hear how you are using some of these tips for your summer, and give me some feedback of how it's working. So thanks again for attending today, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.